Alright, so chapter 10 is all about criminal law and cybercrime. And it first talks about the difference between civil law and criminal law. Civil law is just between person to person or person to government. And so you need evidence for proof to even have a case for that. Criminal law, excuse me, criminal law is all about dealing with crime. So which crime is defined as a wrong against society. So in order to have a case, you must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that crime was committed. But even like some crime, like assault, can have criminal prosecution and civil action having to do with civil law, just because it can be a wrong against society, but also person to person. Like, say you assault the person, you're going to be accused by the government, but also that person may charge you for several things if you hurt them. Some classifications of crime include felonies, misdemeanors, and petty offenses. Felonies are just serious crimes that are more punishable by death or imprisonment. Misdemeanors are less serious, and usually they're punished by a fine or confinement for like up to a year. And then petty offenses are just minor violations like jaywalking, and you could be fined or just jailed for a few days, depending on what it is. Criminal liability, that two things have to exist simultaneously in order for a person to be liable. So there must be a performance of a prohibited act, so they must actually do something, and it can't just be all talk. And there also has to be a specified state of mind or intent on the part of the actor. So examples of that would be like recklessness, criminal negligence, a desire to end someone's life, like stuff like that. Corporate criminal liability just says like you can't be imprisoned, but can be liable to fines or denied privileges if you commit that. Because obviously corporations can't be imprisoned, but you still are liable if you commit crimes. Some different types of crimes. There's burglary, larceny, which is stealing, theft, receiving stolen goods, arson, forgery is altering writing. So that has to do with property. There's going to be violence and public order crime, which includes like drunkenness, prostitution, gambling, illegal drugs. There are going to also be victimless crimes. The chapter talks about white collar crime, which is crimes in like a business context. So it can be non-violent, but it's usually in the intent to achieve a business advantage. So trying to make more money out of something like that. So that often includes like bribery, bankruptcy fraud, mail-in wire fraud, embezzlement of money, or insider trading, which actually happened recently with some Congress people before they knew about coronavirus. And also there can be organized crime, which it involves like money laundering, so illegal transactions, or like if they're making money from drugs and they're laundering it through something else so that the government can't see where the income's coming from. Here are some defenses against criminal liability. You can claim, the most common is like claiming self-defense. So I hurt that person because it was part of self-defense. It's usually like using non-deadly forces. People claim that it was a mistake, an entrapment, a statute of limitations, immunity, yeah, which has to do with the Fifth Amendment basically. So just like you don't have to be a witness against yourself. People also claim that the crime was a necessity in order to prevent greater harm. So that's kind of similar to self-defense. Some criminal procedures just have to do with the Supreme Court ruling safeguards to protect the people when they commit crimes. So the amendments that have to do with that are the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 8th, which the 4th just mainly talks about like search warrants, or that's protecting like that you have to have a warrant in order to be searched. And then the 5th Amendment has to do with due process. The 6th is more about like your rights as a person with trials. And then the 8th Amendment talks about like bails and fines when in jail. Another criminal procedure is the Miranda Rule, which was based off of a landmark case in 1966, and that was just all about, like, you hear when you get arrested, you get given your Miranda rights, which is just basically your constitutional rights, that so when someone's getting arrested, that they are aware of their freedom of speech, their freedom of anything that has to do with it. And there are also, another procedures, there has to be probable cause to even have a warrant to arrest. The last thing the chapter talks about is just cybercrime. So this is just all to do with computer crime, so it's like any violation within computer technology. The most common is theft or fraud, kind of like what I was talking about earlier, but it's through like identity theft or password theft or even hacking, which happens more and more as like technology is more rampant. And even like banks and stuff are all online. And so they put the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and it just basically says that you're subject to criminal prosecution even if it's through a computer. So yeah, that's it.